Grown from around 50 students. Last semester we had 140, and this semester it's sitting at around 100. So it's pretty healthy enrolments. I'm the only lecturer on the course,
And
so
it's
I
fully
manage
online?
everything. Yes, fully online. And that's been a particular challenge with the course, because traditionally the students, they're postgraduate students, a lot of them are international, and they typically come from countries where, I guess, more traditional forms of education are quite common, so technology integration is not a really large component of what they're used to. So the online course it can be very intimidating for them. So I'm, over the last couple of years, been trying to improve the course in a way where I give them a new learning experience, something that maybe is even better than face-to-face. And I've sort of hit the limits of what I can do in terms of content development. And now I'm really seriously thinking about how can I improve the way that I interact with students and what information can I gather about my students and feed back to them to enhance their learning. And because it's online, obviously a lot of behaviours and activities and data is collected there that I don't think I'm using very well or at all. Mainly because maybe I don't have the time, or maybe because that data's hard to get out and use, or maybe I just don't know how to do something. And yeah, so this idea of learning analytics really was very interesting to me. And I had a look through some of Blackboard's features, so some of the examples that are online at the moment through RMIT. And so I think it was is it the Retention Centre, I think, which tracks students' engagement in the course, so their movement through assessment, access history as well, which I think is really useful. So, and you can set up alerts, so if a student hasn't logged in over a week, to maybe send them a little email reminder to say, you got some assessment coming up, make sure you're working towards that goal. But it also allows you to open up the conversation with the student, so maybe if something's going wrong with the student, they see that email and they feel obliged to explain why they haven't been engaging in the course. And that's a great way to start discussions around, do you need extra support? Do you need special consideration? Where do we go from here? And usually the students are preoccupied with another course or a piece of assessment, and they'll send an email back saying, assuring me that I'm going to work on it this weekend.
You mentioned that you'd send an email to students reminding them or touching base with them. If you've got 100 to 140 students,
how do you manage it?
Yeah.
How do you?
Well, most students are progressing fine. So I think the last email, so I have an event set up in my calendar. So at the start of each week, I have an alert that will check. So I'll go into the retention centre, I'll check the students who are at risk, and then I'll follow up with them. I'll look at it and see what is the main reason that they've actually been flagged. Usually it's just access, and I'll send an email just saying, I've noticed you haven't logged into the course in quite some time. Please let me know if there's any issues. This assessment is due soon. It's important that you keep progressing in the course so that things don't get on top of you.
So that email, is it personalised? Hey Fred, hey Jack, hey Lisa, hey, or is it?
No, it's just a generic alert. So it explains to the student why I've sent the email to them.
And it comes from Blackboard?
Yes, but it's BCC'd.
Yeah, so no one sees.
Because it identifies maybe 24 students that are at risk, and my previous emails have been about 25% of the course that haven't been accessing Blackboard on a regular basis. So you BCC them, and then the students will get that alert, and you're hoping the students that are having some problems, they'll go, oh, well, I sort of maybe need to follow up and address this. So, and it's better. In the past, I haven't done anything. I've just waited for the student to contact me, and I obviously tell them at the start of the course that if you need help, to contact you. But a lot of students won't do that. A lot of students will traditionally leave things to the last minute.
Okay, so if you send out the email and saying, hey, do you need any help, what sort of response do you get back from the students then? It's like
it's either no response, so it's early in the semester at this stage, so I expect probably half of those students at risk to unenroll by census date. So there's typically the students who have maybe over-enrolled in subjects and they're just trying out to see which one they will do. So a lot of them will disappear. and then the other students, they're the ones that I will get concerned about. But it's early in the semester, so a lot of these students are maybe, have enrolled and preoccupied, maybe haven't sort of fully engaged in the semester to start with.
Yep.
But it's going to be interesting to see how things change as larger assessment approaches. I'm pretty interested to see how the system works.
And what do you expect when the big assignment comes? Do you think that then people who are going to drop off will disappear straight away?
I think what I'm going to see is that the retention centre will start flagging a lot less people, because they'll be seen to have been, logging into the course to frantically do that assessment. But afterwards, it will, help highlight students who haven't performed, at a satisfactory level, and that again will allow me to approach those students and notify them that I'm a little bit concerned, and that they need to follow up with me, if they need extra assistance, and to not let it get to the last test in the semester, and you're facing a failure. Now is the time to act. And in the past I haven't really done that, and you always have a handful of students at the end of each semester emailing you or coming to see you panicking because they've realised that their performance hasn't been up to scratch. So I think this weekly email alerts will draw students' attention to the fact that we are noticing things aren't going as we would like. So now is the time to act. And just a little, sense of being monitored, I think will maybe get these students, get into the back of their minds that, maybe I should be picking up my game a little bit.
And that's one question, and I was looking for a document there, but my iPad's having problems connecting to the wireless. Do the students know yet or realise yet that you're tracking them? And when they get this email from you going, hey, I see you haven't, or do you have any concerns, can I help you with? Has any of them come back to you and said, hey, you can see when I've logged in, or did you know I've logged in?
No, not yet. Out of the 24 students that I might have emailed, you'll typically only get responses from 4 or 5, with explanations about, I enrolled in the course late, and I've been, really pressured by the other subjects at the moment, but this weekend I'm going to catch up. So there's been no concerns that I'm monitoring. I think it's assumed because it's an online course. The students do have an understanding that that information, that data, is being gathered. Also in my projects, so I have a large project that's worth 40%, and they have to conduct their own online virtual experimental scientific study. They do that, they plan the study in groups and do the data collection in groups, and then there's individual write-up. But when they're collecting the data, the system that we use, it's an online virtual environment, and I notify the students that from that environment I can see everything that you've clicked on. Okay, so, and that's just for an authenticity perspective, so I will know if the students have made up data, basically, because I can check their logs. Their logs don't match the data that they gathered, I instantly know that it's not authentic. And I do warn them of that, and that's purely from an assessment and plagiarism academic conduct perspective, that we are monitoring you.
Do you know how they feel about that? Or you just don't get any comments, just like you say, they expect it, and this is just...
No, I mean, if it was a face-to-face course in an exam, you've got people monitoring you with the eyes, whereas this is an online course. So the way I monitor you is your behaviour online.
Do you think they understand the extent to which you can kind of monitor them in terms of,
Well, it's there. It's written for the project. There's a specific statement that says that we can see everything that you do in this online environment. So they're warned of it. How many students read that? I'm not entirely sure. And I think to date I've only had one student that's tried to fabricate data. And I've also had a couple of students that have actually written up their report explaining the experiment this way, but then when you actually have a look at their logs, you can see that that's not how they conducted the experiment. Say, for example, you have a cup of coffee and they want to know, does that coffee improve their maths test performance in a randomised experiment. So consuming coffee, you have to wait a certain amount of time for that coffee to be absorbed and exert, caffeine to exert an impact on your central nervous system.
What time frame is that?
I think the literature says around half an hour,
Really?
40 minutes. So in the proposal, I get the students to actually state that. So with this, with the logs of the students' behaviour, I can actually see when they clicked to give the coffee to the virtual participant, and when they clicked to do the maths test. And this student that I had was only waiting a minute, or not even a minute. He was basically waiting for them to drink the coffee, which takes about a minute of time, and then bang, straight to the maths test for all of their subjects. And I called, like, that information was there. I could see that he had there was a mismatch between what he said that he'd done in the experiment and what was actually done on the island, and he tried to hide that fact. If he had said that he waited a minute, okay, I probably would have been less harsh in terms of the feedback that I gave him, because I was quite assertive with the student, saying you haven't conducted the experiment correctly, okay, and you can't reward that.
It's good to have that feedback, though, isn't it? Then you can see straight away exactly what's kind of happening and see where the problem lies, because you can monitor it so easily.
Exactly right. And we, particularly with online learning, we do have a lot of concerns around, I guess, authenticity. And it's systems like this that we can actually monitor student behaviour. And if something as complex as a project, it's very unlikely that they're going to get other people to do it for them, because who would do that? Because it is such a complex and involved process. So and having that monitor, reliable internet connection. So all the software, we originally had software issues. There used to be a textbook with the course, and the textbook, if you're in the UK, you can only get the UK version, and all the exercise numbers, page numbers are all out of whack. So you're trying to communicate with these students about, look at this page, this section, do this exercise activity, and they're saying, I need to check which one's which, because we've got different numbers, and it was creating all these nightmares. So I got rid of the textbook.
What are you using now instead?
My own online notes through Google Sites. So I developed a Google site for the course, and that's been great. My what was it? The overall satisfaction of the course jumped 20% this semester. I got rid of the textbook.
So
dramatic improvement.
You got rid of the textbook and then you changed, or you got rid of the textbook, changed all at the same time?
So
was it textbook that jumped, or was
semester.
it the Google site that made it jump?
Yeah, so I had to have the Google site done to get rid of the textbook. So last semester the textbook, and then I spent my summer writing the Google site, and then implemented it the next semester.
And so is it just kind of your basic notes of what's going, like lesson by lesson, or is it
comprehensive notes, videos, multimedia, integrated applets?
It's kind of like our own program in itself.
It's everything. It's basically a lecture delivered. Not as a video recording. I don't believe that we should be using online videos to deliver lectures. I mean, it's still just a lecture. So they're all short videos, mainly demonstrations of computations. So if a student needs to calculate a mean in SPSS, there's a video showing, right, how do I do that in SPSS? So and that was very important to me, that the notes were integrated with the technology use as well, because there's no point separating that in statistics anymore.
If you're using your Google site, are you tracking or using any of the analytics?
Yes. So this is very interesting. So with RMIT, we don't appear to have access to their analytics service. But surprisingly, and I think it's actually working. I had a look at the data last night. You can actually track an RMIT Google site using a personal Gmail address. So you just got to use the tracking codes. And it seems to be tracking. It's tracking something. Is
it you, or is it your students it's tracking?
It'd have to be my students, because it would also be tracking me as well, because if I access the Google site, then it views that as a session. Okay, but obviously my inclusion in there wouldn't be that great. So the reason that I'm tracking at this stage is I want to understand when my students are actually studying the course content, because this is an online postgraduate biostatistics course. So postgraduate students are really interesting people. They're typically got a job.
Yep.
So their hours are really unusual, and they're usually up to all hours of the morning studying for the course. So they're very highly motivated students, generally very resilient, and yeah. So my view is that a traditional brick and mortar university doesn't cater these students very well to their study habits, and I think online learning offers the best way to overcome that.
I agree.
Flexible way of
I don't know how else.
education.
I work full time. I have 2 small children. There's no way I can commit myself to 5 to 9 sessions on a Tuesday and Thursday night.
And these students can't as well.
No.
Although when they come into the course, they still do have this expectation that there's going to be online lectures or something that they have to log into and watch.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty quick to dispel that and to sort of say that anything that we do in this course will be available to you at any time. So even if we do have some sort of face-to-face session, we had our first recorded Google Hangout session the other day.
Oh, yeah.
I think I had about 15 students logged in online and about another 6 students here in this office area. I had the computer on wheels set up out there, and they're all so they can see my screen projecting in here.
Yeah.
So I had my webcam and microphone set up, and then I had the screen capture technology recording the session. And actually, like the audio and everything came out brilliantly. I was so happy with it.
Excellent.
And that went for about an hour long, and then I uploaded that video onto Google Drive, and then shared the link through the Google community site.
Yep.
And so all the students who weren't there can then later go back, and because I demonstrated a lot of things for the first set of exercises and how to do that in SPSS.
Okay.
So yeah, that's flexible, and now that's viewable.
Yeah.
Nobody's missed out.
Yeah.
They didn't have the opportunity to sit in there and ask questions, but I guess you're relying on your peers to ask the right questions during that time.
But they can always get back to you via email and say,
and
look,
with each other as well. To kind of share the information. And
so the Google site's there, so if they have any follow-up questions, they can just make another post. So the Google apps that we have is just incredible, but I don't think we're utilising them very well. Why can't we track our Google sites within the university through Google Analytics?
So what information are you capturing, and kind of what are you doing with, how are you making it meaningful?
At this stage, it's very, very simple. I just want to use the information to understand when my students are accessing the site.
And when are they accessing it?
Their study habits. Surprisingly, there's a large group of students who are accessing it 9 to 5, but there's an equally large number of students who are accessing it all the way up to about midnight. And some students 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it will drop off, so they are getting some sleep, which is great. And then it'll sort of spike up very early in the morning as well. Sort of see a bit of a kick up.
Insight into study habits and what people,
Originally, I had this survey that the students filled out, and it was like a really tedious survey to fill out, and also to analyse and present back to the students. Whereas this analytics, it shows. It's just tracking who's logging into the site.
It makes it easy for everyone, and it's accurate. It's going to be accurate.
The data is quite complex because it all comes down to how do you define a session, and I do have some anomalies in the data. So one day I had 288 sessions, just in this Friday night at 6 o'clock in the morning. I can't explain it.
Okay.
The regular sessions per hour is generally maybe 15, 20 max. Okay. So I just have this anomaly 280 6 o'clock Friday morning.
Okay.
So the data's not. I don't know how clean it is. I think it's clean enough to draw some the conclusions that I need to draw.
So when it's not clean enough, and you say it is enough to draw your conclusions, do you have reservations about using the data and what you're getting out of Blackboard? No, because
it's information I've never had access to before, or easy access to before.
And it's easy,
I understand. Yeah, it's very easy to get. You basically just put in a query into the analytics service, specify the date window that you're looking at, and then it'll present it in the actual analytics. So you don't even have to take the data out. But I want to take the data out and show the students, like, this is what you guys are doing.
So you do show the students. And what do they think of that?
Yeah, of course. I haven't. Well, I looked at it last night.
Okay.
But I didn't actually finish the plot, so I'm just going to show them some box plots so it relates back to the content that they're learning in Module 1.
How are you going to show them? You're just going to do a Google
Online.
Hangout session, or are you going
No, it'll be an online graph that they can go in and click on and integrate. So I use a service called Plotly. It's an online data analysis and visualization tool. Integrates with Google Drive, and basically you can create a plot, publish it online, and the students you can share that with the world. Students can go in and click, and they go through the plot, and when they mouse over the boxes, all the statistics appear. It's really cool.
It's great, isn't it? Then they have that sense of self-awareness as well, because then the information's about them, so they become more aware of their own behaviour.
Because what I feel, I need to educate the students about my role as well. Like, what is it like to coordinate an online course? What challenges am I facing as a lecturer? Because a lot of the students aren't aware of what we do. I think for an online course, they probably just think it's online and the lecturer is there if you hassle them long enough to go and arrange an appointment. But they don't realise that we are doing a lot behind the scenes. And this semester particularly, I am tracking a lot of their behaviour so that I can understand and think about strategies to improve my delivery of the course. So I will, so I'll feed that back to them, and they can have a look and compare and see, because they'll know when they're studying, and they can see, oh, there's all these students, like, look at all these students logging in after dinner. Or maybe look and go, oh, I'm not that unusual. There's another 20 students who are logging in at the same time as me.
What about your workload? Has it increased since you've started turning on, switching on all the learning analytics, since you've started playing with it all, setting it up?
Well, I only do what I'm capable of doing. I mean, there's a
As in time frame or skill set?
Both.
Okay. Obviously,
these are new techniques, methods that I'm learning, so there is that, I guess, self-teaching, and you have to do a lot of research. I mean, Google does make a lot of this stuff very easy. I'd hate to be trying to program this from scratch. That would just be impossible, and I'd probably never do it. But these services are there, and you just have to spend a little bit of time experimenting. That's what I do. I just experiment. Just give it a go. If it doesn't work, who cares? I mean, you'll eventually get it right. And the students are forgiving as well, so if you mess up a graph or something like that, and I have had that where the graphs have stopped feeding the links, and the links become corrupt, and I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a learning experience. So you only do what you can manage. But I guess, if it's aligned to improving the delivery of your course, and it's just a part of your job. And I guess, if you see the advantage of using these methods, and how that can help improve your teaching and the learning of the students, then it doesn't come into question about whether that's increasing your workload. It's just doing your job in a different way, and maybe a better way, and a more effective way. So,
it's helpful. And who taught you to? So when you're first playing around with everything, and you kind of looking up about learning analytics and things, how did you get? What was the most useful information to kind of help guide you to turn this on or that on? Was there anything in particular?
So I started with the Blackboard stuff that was provided by RMIT, so I thought that's a great place to start. It's already sitting there, it's already well developed. So I started using that, but then I started to get other ideas, particularly I use like the Google Apps a lot. And they've got these fantastic things called forms. They've got plots which can dynamically update based on new data arriving. I use Google Sites. So it just got me thinking, well, all the data's there. It's just about me making the decision to actually collect it and then going to the effort to use that information and feed it back to students. So, I guess it was... so you just start with something small, but then it quickly, you almost get a little bit addicted to it and going, what other data can I get? Or you see something, I really want to do this. I really wanted to understand when students are accessing the course notes. Okay, so I could survey them. Alright, but surveys, 50% response rate, it's tedious to fill out, and it's only as good as the day that it's filled out. So a week, 2 weeks later, it's already out of date. So how could I do that? And then I looked in Google Analytics and go, oh, this is actually tracks like, you know, the IPs pinging the site, you know, accessing the site content. So it's great. I don't have to survey the students. I can monitor them. Well, I can't monitor them individually because I can't identify the student, but because the site is behind RMIT's network, the only people getting access to it are people who are authenticated with RMIT. So I know those are at least RMIT students. Maybe there's some staff in there as well, because the staff can actually get access to the Google site. But I assume that it would mostly be students, and that's, you know, it's live. It's constantly being updated. So I don't have to worry about, you know, reapplying the survey. Don't have to worry about it getting out of date. And eventually at the end of the semester I want to actually take the entire timeline of access and then put in the graph, you know, when assessment was due, and sort of see if you do sort of see spikes, you know, before that assessment and when the students are accessing certain material. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done with that data.